Hi friends, it's Miri and it's time for another reading resource video for our From and About Asia reading project. And in the upcoming month of August, we're gonna be reading about Japan and Eastern Asia culture. So I have here today a list of books that were translated from Japanese that I found interesting during research. But first of all, if you didn't know, From and About Asia is a long-term reading project to learn and celebrate the diversity of Asian culture through reading. And we take turns to read about one country and its sub-region every month. I will link all the information down below that you might want to know, as well as the Discord invitation in case you want a more in-depth discussion. Now let's talk about our target country, Japan. Sometimes when I'm doing research for the From and About Asia reading project, for some target countries, I'm facing the problem of I can't find enough books, especially when the countries is underrepresented. But for Japan, I have the completely opposite problem. There's simply just so many books are translated from Japanese and so many books are about Japan or Japanese inspired. So it's very hard to narrow it down to a list to talk about. And personally, I read a fair amount of Japanese literature growing up and also now. So I have the problem of having too many resources. So I kind of narrowed down my research and limited to the translated fiction from Japanese in the recent 5 years from 2018 to nowadays. I set the limit to fictional books because interestingly, I didn't find enough of non-fiction books that I'm interested in or on the topic that I normally read for From and About Asia. There are so many non-fictions about Japanese art, Japanese bento box making, Japanese fabric, and all of the arts and lifestyle kind of books, but I like to read about culture, history, politics, environment, and also society about our target country. When I was researching for From and About Asia reading project, I didn't find enough books that are translated into English about that subject. There are a lot of books about Japanese society that are translated into Chinese. So I leave them out and maybe I'll do another video separate on that topic only. In this video, I want to talk about the interesting fictional books that I found. But speaking of fiction, I also ruled out all the mystery novels from this video because there are just simply so many, and I am a huge fan of Japanese mystery, and I read so many of them, and there are so many Japanese mystery that interests me. If I include those, this video will be dedicated to Japanese mystery only. So my plan is to make another video only about Japanese mystery in the future, maybe in August, to talk about the topic that is dearly in my heart. But this video, again, fictional books that are not Japanese mystery. And another disclaimer, as usual, I did not and don't plan to read all the books in this video simply because I don't have enough time. So these books are the books that I found interesting while I was researching for books from Japan. So with that being said, let's finally dive into the books. The first book I got here is Heaven by Kawakami Mieko, translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. This book was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year, and it's been on my radar ever since. In this story, there is a 14-year-old schoolboy who is suffered and bullied because he has a lazy eye. And instead of resisting, he chooses to suffer in complete resignation. And there's only one person that understands him, is a female classmate who has went through the similar thing by his tormentors. The subject matter of this book is of course bullying, but what's more interesting is the philosophical and the religious debate about violence. Some people compare this book to Malice by Higashino Keigo, which is a book that has similar topic and is also a book that I recommend if you haven't checked it out. The author has two other books that I found interesting. The first one is called Breasts and Eggs. It's a rather feminist tale talking about three women on the road to looking for peace and fulfillment that they can call their own. own. The second one is called Meat's Ice Sandwich. It's talking about a boy or a man that is obsessed with a lady who sells sandwich in the local mall. Among all her books, Heaven is the one that I'm personally most interested in, and most likely I'll add it to my August TBR for Japan, but I can see myself reading more than one book of hers in the future. The second book here is At the End of Matinee by Hirano Keiichirou, and it's translated by Juliet Winters Carpenter. This is a contemporary romance story centered around two people, a famous and profound guitarist and a journalist. After they met for the first time in a concert, they started a long-term conversation exchange and they bond immediately. And neither of them knows about love and neither of them knows how to make the first move. This is a very lovely and unique story, follows our protagonist over the course of a few years in and outside of Japan. And it follows their relationship as it rises and grants with a rhythm of a symphony. And this book sounds just so charming and refreshing, and overall a very lovely story to read. Following a novel called Tokyo Ueno Station by Miri, translated by Morgan Giles. This is a historical fiction talking about a man called Kazu who was born in 1933, the same year as the emperor, and coincidentally his life events echoes a lot of activity and events in the imperial family, and a lot of his life tied to this one place in Tokyo, a park near the Ueno station. So in this book, we follow him as he recounts all his life stories from the year he was born to the Olympics in 1964, to the tsunami in 2011, and until the announcement of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. The author Miri is a Zainichi, means Korean Japanese, so her background provides her a very unique point of view when writing about the margins in Japan, such as the protagonist in this book. Then I have here There's No Such Thing as Easy Job by Tsumura Kikuko, translated by Polly Barton. It says that this book is Convenience Store Woman meets My Year of Rest and Relaxation, two books that I loved so much, and by that statement alone, I feel like I will read this book for sure. If not only for this project, I'll read it in the future by myself. The story starts when a young woman walked into an employment agency, requested a job that is closer to her home and required no reading, no writing, and ideally very little thinking. So she was sent to monitor someone who is in suspect of storing contraband goods in a hidden camera. Question raised when we're following her story, but one of the most important one is how she finds herself into such a situation. The story sounds so intriguing, and I'm already eager to know what she did before to put her into such a place and what's her plan for the future. Next, I have The Cat Who Saved Books by Natsukawa Sousuke, translated by Louise Heal Kawai. This is a magical story with a talking cat in it. I mean, who can resist a talking cat? And also a bookish story. Our protagonist is a bookish high school student who is about to close a second-hand bookstore he inherited from his bookish, beloved grandfather. When he was doing so, a cat appears and stopped him, and apparently the cat was asking him to set on a journey to save books from their neglectful owners. So here they began their wonderful and peculiar journey where they enter mazes to set books for free. I feel like this story is so lovely and so many buzzwords and themes for our bookish community. I mean, it's cats and books. Following, I have a somewhat modern classic by Mishima Yukio that was originally written in 1968 but was recently translated into English in 2019. And I'm not sure if this book has English translated copy before because his book, he was just so huge, and his book must have been translated before, but this one is a more recent translation. The book is called Life for Sale and is translated by Stephen Dodd. This book is talking about a man called Yamada who realized that the future holds nothing of worth to him, so he put his life for sale on a Tokyo newspaper, and that unleashed a series of unimaginable exploit and bizarre and interesting experience. To be honest, Mishima Yukio is one of the Japanese writers that I wanted to read for so long time since forever, but at the same time I'm intimidated by their books. I have a list of those writers and Mishima Yukio is definitely one on the top. And I feel like his works are supposed to be very illuminating and enlightening, but at the same time very hard to understand, which is very weird considering that I've never read any of his books. So how did I come up with these feelings? But anyhow, I think I won't read his books for August for our Japan month, but I will read his books for sure in my lifetime. Then there's a book called The Little House by Nakajima Kyoko, translated by Ginny Tapley Takimori, the same translator of Convenience Store Woman. The book was first written in 2010 and got translated into English in 2019. This is a historical fiction that's set in the early Showa era, which is the middle of the first half of 20th century. It was before the Second World War, so by then the Japan situation is becoming more intense, the whole society, but it wasn't a full-on wartime footing. There was a little house in the outskirts of Tokyo where a middle-class family lived in it along with their maid servant Taki. Taki has a notebook where she documented the life of this middle-class family and is seemingly full of joy and day-to-day events. However, there was a very dark and thrilling last chapter of this notebook that wasn't discovered until the death of Taki, and this discovery kind of transformed everything. This honestly sounds so intriguing, and I can't wait to find out what happened to Taki and also the household. I know that I've said this already for like multiple books, but I really want to read this book in August. And also this book was adapted into a movie, so if I can find it, I might watch the movie after I read the book. Next up, there is The Lonesome Bodybuilder by Motoya Yukiko, translated by Asa Yoneda. This is a magical realism short story collection that is based on our day-to-day orderly life, but each of them developed into this bizarre, surreal, and grotesque situation. For example, we have a housewife who recently takes up bodybuilding and sees some changes in her body, but her workaholic husband failed to notice. And then we have a saleswoman who works in a clothing boutique who waits for a customer who went into the fitting room for seemingly forever and never came out. And a newlywed who noticed that her husband's feature has been slid on his face. There are in total of 11 short stories in this collection, and honestly, this book just reminds me of Cursed Bunny, which is a short story collection from Korea that I read and loved in the beginning of this year, so I feel like this book has so much potential. And then there's another book with cat in the title. It's The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Aligawa Hiro and translated by Philip Gabriel. A cat called Nana takes on a journey with his owner. They have no other purpose for this journey other than to visit 3 of his owner's longtime friends. They travel in a silver van across Japan, and on the road they learn the true meaning of love and loyalty and courage and gratitude. It sounds like a very cozy book and is actually already well received by the bookish community. So I just found out by researching, and I saw a lot of people have already reviewed and loved it. So I think this book is just very interesting. Then there is The Memory Police by Ogawa Yoko, translated by Stephen Snyder. This is a book on this list that I have seen everywhere on bookish community online, and is set in an unnamed island in Japan where objects are disappearing and people won't remember them after they disappeared. However, there are a few people who do remember, and they are also in danger because they are haunted by the memory police, who is set to commit to ensure the disappeared objects are remain forgotten. So people who have memories live in constant fear, and our protagonist is a novelist who has to battle against the forgetting things because she needs to write, and also she wants to help her editor, who is the people who remembers things and also whose life is endangered from the memory police. This book is about the power of memory and the trauma of loss. from what I could tell from the reviewer that I follow, this is a hit or miss for most of the people. So I'm kind of curious about what I would think if I've ever read this book. The last book I have in this video is called The Factory by Oyamada Hiroko, translated by David Boyd, who's also a translator of a novel that I mentioned earlier. I forgot which one. This is another magical realism story. I have so many of them in this list, but it's set in an unnamed city in Japan where 3 characters are working in a sprawling factory. Each of them focuses on their very specific job. One studies moss, one shreds paper, and the other one proofreads documents. This industrial factory slowly expands and enveloping the poor characters. And it also raises a very interesting question: where is the end of the factory and the start of the rest of the world? The story sounds so philosophical. I feel like just from the setting, it gives us a lot of questions to think about our society, about our life, about work-life balance. So it's a very fascinating setting and a very mysterious story. And now I'll stop here to prevent this video become a million years long, and I will also limit myself to read only 2 fictional books from Japan for August, which is already a challenge because I feel like I said I want to read plenty of the books from this list alone already in this video, but I do want to read some non-fictions about our target country as usual and keep up my pace of learning about the society, the culture, the history, and all of that. As I mentioned, I do already have some non-fictions about Japanese society that I want to read, but the problem is that they are all in Chinese and I don't find any of their English translations. I feel like the focusing on translating word in Chinese market and the English speaker market is slightly different in this aspect, but I do feel like the urge to make a video about non-fictions about Japan society in the near future, so I do need to do more research on this topic. Anyway, stay tuned for future videos about Japan. I feel like this is a topic that I would genuinely want to talk about even after the Japan month of From and About Asia reading project, so I will at least doing a video about Japanese mystery. I have so much to introduce, and also I'll talk about the books I will actually read in August in my TBR. So please let me know any of your thoughts about the books that I mentioned in this video, or do you have any recommendations about books from Japan? I'm sure there's plenty. And don't forget to say hi in the comment section down below and thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I wish you happy reading, stay healthy, stay safe, stay cool, and I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!